Reversing narcissistic abuse. Don't just heal the narcissistic abuse trauma. Reverse the narcissistic devaluation programming. You have value simply because you exist. Hi, this is Mike. Welcome back to Reversing Narcissistic Abuse YouTube channel. Again, if you want to learn what narcissistic abuse really is underneath the obvious, go here to reversenarcabuse.com. I've got a video course there that tells you the reasons why you can't escape, why the pain lingers forever, why you are stuck in the rumination phase. All of that I talk about here at reversenarcabuse.com. Also, I'm working on my other channel, dovetailing with this, on how to reverse the narcissistic devaluation programming that is just inherent in our society, learning how to completely create a new history for yourself, which will allow you to become a different person. I'm going to be talking about that in this video, but what we're going to be talking about today, again, I love these comments. I could go on and on and on, spontaneously talking about abusers and victim mentality and narcissistic response and abuse response and all that. But when the narcissists show up and tell you exactly why they do what they do and how it affects you, it's just much easier. It just makes things a lot easier for me. So today we're going to look at a comment. This is from somebody. Again, they're responding to me responding to a borderline coming onto the channel and abusing me. Bear in mind, commenters, I don't know you. I've never met you. I don't even know you exist. The only way I know you exist is because you decide to come on here and leave a comment. And you attack me personally. You don't even know me. You see me on here. I may be talking about something somebody else has written. But that's not directed at you. I don't know who you are. But you act as though I came to your house, knocked on your door and said, hey, do you know what your problem is? And that's not what's going on here. This channel is about helping people heal from abuse. That means everybody. I mean everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a borderline, a narcissist. I don't care if you're just a codependent, an average person. This channel is about healing from narcissistic abuse trauma and learning how to turn your life around. And you, borderlines, listening to me, if you want that healing, I am working on that. If you want to make yourself the victim and you want to decide in your head that I'm attacking you and you want to turn around and attack me, I can't stop you. I appreciate it. It helps me to show what's going on, because every single abuser was once abused. Anyway, we're going to get into that. So here's the comment. I am not showing who the person is. I'm not giving their name, partly because the comment didn't show up on the YouTube comment section, which leads me to believe that either YouTube blocked it, which happens sometimes, or they changed their mind and they deleted it. But what they don't know after they delete an abusive comment is that it shows up in my email. So I see all of the comments people post, even if they delete them later. Anyways, let's just read the whole thing and then we'll talk about it. This person says, I am a borderline. We were raised by narcissistic mothers. Nothing we did was ever quite good enough. We were never quite loved. We were created to please the mother, to show gratitude, to entertain. We are unhappy court jesters. Always performing, always giving, always trying to please. We have too much empathy. We are desperate to be loved. We live in a malarial state of panic that people won't love us. We are utterly servile to other people's needs. Narcissists love us for this reason, and they love to punish us. This is why we all have the fail-safe of no empathy, the so-called empathy paradox. I never heard of the empathy paradox before. I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. The one mechanism inside us that will protect us from being used, sucked dry, depleted, and abused. Well, we'll see if that's true. We can sense this behavior over time, and sooner or later we react against it. We are emotional lie detectors. Oh my God. I'm going to have so much fun with this. Obviously, I haven't read the whole thing. Most narcissists don't know they are narcissists. Oh my God, the irony there. They don't see their heavy use of us for what it really is, abuse. I don't know what that means. Narcissists chastise and admonish borderlines, tell the borderlines they are damaged or evil, complain bitterly that we weren't thankful enough for their loving gestures. In reality, gestures to garner the narcissist praise and obeisance. And on it goes, the horrible dehumanizing, silent asymmetric warfare of the narcissist. It goes on until our overdeveloped limbic system says enough, and then we burn you to the ground. We abuse you back, and because the narcissist is so horrified that we are doing this, so enraged, so intent on punishing this behavior, he spends the next 10 years on YouTube telling us why we must be punished, discarded, blocked, taken to court, and reminded again and again of our failings, while never seeing his own. The unaware narcissist devotes himself to a continuation of this abuse dressed up as advice. They will never forgive the reactive abuse of the borderline who has moved on, wounded but alive. All right, so much to talk about here. So this is obviously directed at me. Why else would they say this? Obviously, very passive aggressive, obviously directed at me. Now, I didn't put the name of this person, as I said, because they must have changed their mind and deleted it, or probably did that. But also because I don't know them. The only way I know this person is a borderline is because they say they're a borderline. I didn't ask them. This person, however, is accusing me of being a narcissist. Now, this is very common, by the way. Borderlines love to call anybody who doesn't do what they want a narcissist. And in fact, they will call you a narcissist and accuse you of abuse when you haven't done it. This is the thing. I mean, it's obvious this person is, I don't know if they're in therapy. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know, you've got to have the right therapy, and you have to want to heal. You have to understand that you have a mental illness that is destructive to both you and other people. If you don't know that, and you're only going to try and focus on your wounds and heal your wounds without understanding your part in it, then, well, you know, we're talking about somebody with a personality disorder. So let's be clear. If you don't split on people, if you don't accuse people of things they haven't done, if you don't ghost, whether it's you flip out and attack them, whether you get angry, whether you slash their tires, or whether you ghost them, or whether you disappear, or whether you cheat on them, or it doesn't matter how you act out, whether it's done quietly or whether it's done loudly. It's still the same. And by the way, it has the exact same effect. So those of you borderlines who want to call yourself quiet borderlines, it doesn't matter. Ghosting, hiding in a room for days at a time, it has the exact same damaging effect as if you were yelling and screaming, because it's the same thing. So if you don't do those things, if you don't split, if you don't react abusively, and if you don't mistake love for abuse, you're not a borderline. So if you're telling me that you don't do those things, and you're being, that I, who don't know you, am accusing you of something you haven't done, then you're not a borderline. We got no problem. But if you're admitting that you're a borderline, then it means that you have, at least in the past, done those things, and they have been horrifically damaging to other people. If you don't realize how damaging it is, like if it doesn't hit you how damaging it is, then then you haven't awoken. You're not conscious. You're still extremely unconscious. And let me go through this. Look, this person describes how horrible it is to be a borderline, and I don't doubt any of it. It's probably, in fact, I'm sure it's worse than what this person says. So this person says, I'm a borderline. We were raised by narcissistic mothers. So now this person is talking for all borderlines. Really, this is about you. So let's be honest. This is about you. I'm a borderline. We were raised by narcissistic mothers. Nothing we did was ever quite good enough. We were never quite loved. I would say you were never loved at all, not even close. So, you're underselling the damage you experienced. It's far worse than never being quite loved. You were horrifically transactionalized. You were never given any love. You were never given any value. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's enough to kill somebody. The only reason you didn't die as an infant is you just got barely enough attention that it didn't kill you. That's horrible. That's worse than death. So don't undersell it. I'm with you. I'm completely with you at how horrible it must have been. We were created to please the mother, to show gratitude, to entertain. We are unhappy court jesters, always performing, always giving, always trying to please. We have too much empathy. Now I have to stop you there. You don't know what empathy means. What you're calling empathy is not empathy. What you're calling empathy is codependent, psychic. Borderlines are freaking psychic, man. They know what you're feeling before you feel it. So during the love bombing stage, they know exactly what to do, what to say, how to treat you to make you feel amazing. Now, the reason why that happened, they'll tell you, is because they have too much empathy, because they conflate empathy with codependent, psychic predicting your feelings. And that's different. That's coming from fear. That's coming from an intense fear to avoid being persecuted and abused. If, as you say, you were raised by a narcissistic mother, then what that means is that if you didn't meet their needs and know what their needs were, you were going to get horrifically abused. And even if you did it right, you were still going to get abused. So it made you extremely sensitive to other people's feelings. That is not empathy. Empathy is caring for other people. Empathy is not being wrapped up in yourself and you know what's going on with another person, even when you're angry with them. That's not your definition. You have empathy when you either feel loving or you conflate love with actual childlike idealization. Again, you conflate idealization with love. If you don't, you're not a borderline. So if you say, I don't do that, then you're not a borderline. We don't have a problem. Then if you are a borderline, by definition, this is something that happens within you. Happens with all borderlines. As I've said in one of the recent videos, somebody said there's, I don't know, whatever it was, 65 different symptoms. No borderlines are the same. Yeah, but we're getting lost in the weeds. All of those other tiny little things, while they might be important to each individual, because every person's an individual, there are at least 3 things that every borderline does, and if they don't do these things, they're not a borderline. They split, they devalue, and they discard. If you don't do those 3 things, you're not a borderline. All of the other symptoms, great, that's for you to figure out, but for the rest of us, those are the things that matter. The 3 things that define you as a borderline that I just defined. I'm not saying I'm talking for all psychology. That's my definition. But I'm telling you, for the victims of borderline abuse, those are the things that we care about. Those are the things that make us say borderlines are horrible to be in relationship with. For those reasons, not the other ones. Not that when you get moody and you have to go and, meditate for 4 hours. Not when you have to leave. There's a lot of things that are really hurtful and painful for us, but we would accept that if you didn't split on us, devalue us, and discard us. So to say you have too much empathy isn't true, because you can never have too much empathy. Empathy means that when you're in a place of self-love, you have love for others, even when it's inconvenient, even when you're angry, even when you're in pain. And empathy means that you are consistent, which means that if you're loving to me today and the feeling you give is I love you because of who you are, then that means you're going to love me tomorrow for who I am also. But when you split, when you switch, you no longer have empathy. We haven't got to it. You're going to prove you don't have empathy, because empathy doesn't stop when it's inconvenient. When you have an impulse, empathy doesn't stop. You can be in a place where you don't have a loving feeling and still have empathy. You don't know that. You've never experienced that, or you would never even say, we have too much empathy. What you do have too much of, which I'm empathizing with you, is you have too much codependent fear of being rejected. And so you work really, really hard to know what other people's feelings are. You're conflating that with empathy. That is not empathy. It's coming from a selfish place. It's coming from survival. I'm not getting on you for that. I grew up in a really messed up home. I know what that is. And you had to do it to survive. Good for you. For you that you learned that skill to survive. Now you're conflating it with empathy, and it's not true. It's not empathy. You say, we are desperate to be loved. We live in a material state, a malarial state of panic that people won't love us. That's horrible. It's also really destructive. So if you don't understand that being in that state is destructive to other people, let me be clear. When you are in this malarial state of panic that people won't love you, you are causing harm to other people. I'm not judging you. You can't help that. But if you want to heal, you have to know that that is destructive to other people. You don't think so because you're wrapped up in it. And the whole point of this is, by the way, I have to let you know, when a borderline starts with a long diatribe of why they're a victim, what they're doing is they're loading up. They're cocking their gun. They're putting in the shells. They're raising their fist back. They're getting ready to nail you. They're getting ready to hurt you. What they're doing is they're justifying the abuse they're about to unload on you. That's what this person, as you read, this person's going to do that to me. I don't even know them. We live in a malarial state of panic that people won't love us. We are utterly servile to other people's needs. Well, obviously not all the time. Because if you were that way all the time, we would be talking about some different kind of personality disorder. That's not the case. You're going to prove that in just 1 second here. We live in a malarial state of panic that people won't love us. We are utterly servile to other people's needs. Narcissists love us for this reason, and they love to punish us. This is why we have the fail-safe of no empathy. So now you just said that you don't have empathy. If you have empathy, you can't turn it off. Somebody who has empathy doesn't turn it off arbitrarily or because they got their feelings hurt. Now, there's a scale, everybody's somewhere on the scale. So there are people who aren't borderlines who can do this. But it's a choice for them. But you just told us it's a choice. You just said the reason why we do this really horrible, sociopathic, psychopathic thing of turning off our empathy is because of how horribly we've been abused. I understand that. It's a survival technique. But you're doing it to people that aren't abusing you. Now, if you're going to tell me you never do this, you never turn your empathy off unless it's a narcissist abusing you, if that's the case, then you're not a borderline. Borderlines do this to people that aren't abusing them. Your overwhelming fear of being rejected makes it that you don't know when your head is making up something that doesn't exist. This is why you have a personality disorder, as opposed to somebody who's just a codependent or somebody who has emotional issues. You're so far on the scale because of the horrific abuse you just said you went through. In order to survive, you just said, in order to survive, we become secondary psychopaths. If you don't know it, borderlines, go look it up. Sam Vaknin talks about it brilliantly. But borderline personality disorder, another name for it, is secondary psychopath, which means when they split, when they choose to turn off the empathy, they become psychopathic abusers. Even worse than narcissists. Not all narcissists are psychopaths, by the way, in case you didn't know that. I just came out of a scenario where, I saw somebody was actually a communal narcissist. They were never psychopathic. They were never outrightly abusive. It was very subtle and it took long periods of time for it to become aware. But they weren't psychopathic. Psychopath is the worst. And borderlines are secondary psychopaths. And you just admitted to it. You just said proudly, and this is why I psychopathically turn off my empathy that I have too much of, by the way. So again, you got to pick a lane. You can't have too much empathy and then shut it off. That's not how empathy works. It never works like that. If somebody says, I'm a very empathetic person, it means that they have the ability to choose to love and want the best for everybody, even when they don't feel like it. You just said you're incapable of doing that, which means you don't have empathy. I'm not judging you for that. You're still in that state of unhealed borderline trauma. So you're still in that PTSD state of trying to survive. And like people, what happens to people in war when they have PTSD? I mean, the movies are made about it. They come back and they hear a sound and they think that, the planes and the bombs and the helicopters are coming to attack. They go into flashbacks and they think something is happening that isn't happening. This is what happens to borderlines. Borderlines dissociate, and when you attack somebody for narcissistically abusing you when they weren't, that's insane. And that's what you just admitted you are. So all of this setup to try and tell us why it's okay for you to be psychopathically abusive, it's not okay. It's not okay. And I'm not going to co-sign that for you. So, we're utterly servile. Narcissists love us for this reason. They love to punish us. This is why we have the fail-safe of no empathy. The so-called empathy paradox. What a ridiculous phrase. I never heard it, but it's pure bullshit. The one mechanism inside us that will protect us from being used, sucked, dried, depleted, and abused. It actually doesn't do any of those things. It does none of those things. Especially when you, because of your inability to see the truth, because of your PTSD, when you believe that somebody who is loving you is abusing you, sucking you dry, doing all those things, and they're not, it doesn't protect you. If you're a borderline, it is guaranteed. I'm going to repeat myself. If you are an unhealed borderline, it is guaranteed that you have become convinced numerous times that somebody is narcissistically abusing you when they're not. If you don't admit this, then, well, I don't know, then you're in your state of healing wherever that is. But a healed borderline knows this. There's a borderline who's aware. A borderline who is in a state of recovery knows this. You obviously don't, which means I don't know you. So I don't know any of your relationships, but if somebody pointed you out to me and said, I'm thinking of dating that person, I would say, don't do it. It's guaranteed this person is going to split on you and attack you when you're being loving to them. Guaranteed. Stay the hell away from it. You've already told me this. The one mechanism that will protect us from being used, sucked dry, depleted, and abused. That's just not true. And it's not true if you're with somebody who's not a narcissist. We can sense the behavior over time, and sooner or later we react against it. But if you're a borderline, what you think you're sensing is not always true. So you're wrong. You can't sense this over time with everybody. I mean, you might sense it with somebody who actually is abusing you. And it is true that borderlines love being with narcissists. You want to know why? Because narcissists never follow through on the intimacy. And so it puts you in a state where you don't have to split. Because you only split when there's actual empathy, when somebody actually loves you. Because you are afraid of being consumed. You are so afraid of being rejected. And when somebody's love actually penetrates and you start to feel vulnerable, that fear of being consumed and that fear of being rejected becomes so intense, you actually lose your objectivity. You lose your grasp on reality, and you start to make up in your head that this person is a narcissist trying to hurt you. And then you turn off your empathy, and that's your way of justifying, I'm now going to abuse the crap out of this person because I can sense over time. But you can't sense over time with everybody. If you were able to sense with everybody, you wouldn't be a borderline. If you're a borderline, by definition, you don't know who is abusing you and who isn't. And if you don't know this, you're either not in therapy or you haven't gotten to a place in your therapy where you've come to be aware of this. If you want to heal, at some point you're going to have to come to that awareness. How that's going to happen, I don't know. I wouldn't want to take on a borderline as a client myself, and I'm not a psychologist. Anyway, and many psychologists won't take borderlines because of this. Because at some point they're going to split and attack the therapist. Anyway, let's keep going. And then they go on to say, we can sense this behavior. She goes on, he, she, I don't know who it is. We can sense this behavior over time, and sooner or later we react against it. We are emotional lie detectors. No, you're not. You're not. You're right. Sometimes you are right. And at least half of the time you are absolutely 100% wrong. If that's not true, you're not the borderline. Most narcissists don't know they are narcissists. Most borderlines don't know that they're secondary psychopaths. Most borderlines don't know when they're abusing somebody that actually loves them. So everything you just said has been true about you. By the way, let me just say something. You went through this whole diatribe about how you've been horrifically abused. And not only do I believe you, I know it was much worse than what you're presenting. I mean this. Nobody empathizes with your horrific pain more than I do. I know exactly what it was like for you. I may not know exactly the level of your pain or exactly the circumstances, but generally speaking, I absolutely know what you went through. If you say I'm a borderline, I already know. You've been horrifically abused. You did not deserve that abuse. You were a beautiful being whose essence was absolutely amazing and beautiful and unique, and you deserve to be loved and cherished for the unique beauty that you are, and you didn't get that. You not only didn't get that, you were transactionalized. As you said, your job was to please a narcissist who didn't have a soul, who didn't have the ability to love you. It was horrible. There's literally nothing worse a human being can go through. And yet none of that makes the abuse that you do to other people any less horrifically damaging to them as what was done to you. The idea, the assumption is, because I know how badly I was abused, I don't do that to other people. And that's not how it works. Your narcissistic mother was horrifically abused which is why she didn't have the ability to love you, which is why she abused you. So if she was that horrifically damaging to you because she was narcissistically abused, guess what? Your abuse is just as damaging to other people. So whenever you start going into the diatribe of what happened to you and how bad it was, you're actually saying, and this is why I'm really destructive to you. I will destroy you. It happened to me, so I'm going to do it to you. Unless you've gotten the necessary therapy and unless you have actually worked it and become aware. There are narcissists who come onto my channel who leave comments who say, I appreciate what you say. I appreciate that you tell me the truth because I want to know. They want to know what their behavior does to other people. I don't know those people. I don't know if they're able to have healthy relationships or not, but that is the first thing. You have to first be consciously aware without going into the narcissistic guilt trip. By the way, guilt, people all say, you don't understand, I get so filled with guilt. Guilt is narcissistic rage. It means you're full of rage at the people you've hurt. So going beyond that means that you just look at, I couldn't help it, I damaged people, I want to know. I want to know what it was like for them. Just like you want people to know what it was like for you. And the thing is, you think we don't know. We absolutely know. If we've been with you, it's because we know and we desperately want to help you. We desperately want to heal you, unless you're with a narcissist. But as a borderline, you're not going to know the difference, guaranteed. You won't know the difference between just a codependent who loves you and a narcissist who's using you. In fact, the way you know is that the narcissist who's using you, you don't split on them. And you don't split on them because they never allow any real intimacy, which makes you chase after them. All right, so most narcissists don't know they're narcissists. They don't see their heavy use of us, I don't know what that means, for what it really is, abuse. That means you don't see the heavy use of your heavy use of other people as abuse. You don't see how abusive you are. It's because you're so wrapped up in your pain. I get it. Until you can get some healing, you won't know how abusive you are to other people. And again, you deserve to have your story told. You deserve to stand up against the people that abused you. But the people that you abuse also deserve to stand up and say how horribly you abused them. And I mean, there are people who have been on the other side of borderline abuse that have committed suicide. There are people whose lives have been completely destroyed. There are people who've never been able to heal. There are people who've never been able to be in relationships after they've been with a borderline. There are people who have married borderlines 10, 20 years, had kids with them, had everything stolen, and at the end of it, they still get discarded 20 or 30 years later. They are an empty shell of a person. The abuse that happens to the victims of borderlines is as bad as anything a narcissist can do, and in some cases I would say even worse. In fact, the worst abuse I've seen has been borderlines against narcissists, because what borderlines do is they bide their time. As this person says, they play the part that the narcissist wants. They make themselves indispensable because nobody can feed the ego of a narcissist like a borderline. And then the borderline will keep doing that until they wear down the narcissist's the narcissist's protective abuse. And at some point, the narcissist will break and will then become a child and seek to connect. And that's when the borderline will attack. And they will absolutely obliterate the narcissist, destroy them. How do I know this? I dated a narcissist who explained it to me. She sat down and explained how she did this to one of her ex-narcissist. I mean, when she told me the abuse that he did, tying her up, putting her in locking her in rooms and doing all kinds of other things that I can't talk about on YouTube. I mean, he was horrifically abusive to her. And she stayed with him until she broke him down, and then she completely destroyed him. These are borderlines. This is this innocent victim this person is trying to tell you she is, or he is. I don't know if it's a he or a she, whoever it is. Narcissists chastise and admonish borderlines, tell the borderlines they are damaged or evil, complain bitterly that we weren't thankful enough for their loving gestures. She's about to do this to me. She is saying that I am a narcissist. So everything she just said that narcissists do, she's going to do, or he's going to do. Watch. In reality, gestures to garner the narcissist's praise and obeisance, and on it goes, the horrible, dehumanizing, silent, asymmetric warfare of the narcissist. Right. And so it is with the borderline. It's a perfect way of using it. The silent, asymmetric warfare. Because once you get locked into that, once a borderline love bombs you and you get the narcissistic or the trauma bond, when you become bonded to a borderline and you become completely obsessed with how you can heal them, how you can fix them, you are filled with pain when you think about the pain they've been through. You become overwhelmed with an empathy that you can't ever let go of. Unlike the borderline, who can switch their empathy off, the codependent can't. They want to, but they can't. They're incapable of doing that. You know, borderlines are said to be failed narcissists. I would say that the codependent of a borderline is a failed borderline. They can't turn their empathy off. And the more that they think about how much pain the borderline goes in, the more intense their desire and their need to fix them increases. And the borderline uses this and uses this and uses this and sucks them dry until there's nothing left. And when you have been reduced and you are a situational borderline, you're at that state where you are completely, totally wiped out and there's nothing left in you, then they will discard you when you need them the most, and they will discard you in the worst, most destructive way possible. And it is so destructive, borderlines, if you're watching this, it is so absolutely destructive, it has the ability to kill. There are people that have, again, they off themselves. There are people that never recover. They're empty shells and they never get their life back. Thankfully I had the 12 steps and I had other plans of action. I knew what to do, but I was suicidal after mine. And that's saying a lot for me because I'm not a suicidal person. So again, everything this person is saying that the narcissist is doing, it's true. And it's also exactly what borderlines do. It goes on and on until the overdeveloped limbic system says enough, and then we burn you to the ground. So it sounds like a she. He or she is proud that they burn you to the ground. You just got through saying you have too much empathy. There isn't a true codependent out there that ever thinks like this. They get out of this and they don't think to themselves, I'm going to burn that borderline to the ground. Don't get me, there are some that get really angry. But the borderline, this is what they do, and this is true. She just said what I just got through saying it. I wasn't even preparing this, but I told you, the narcissist is the one that's going to get completely devoured by the borderline. In fact, the borderline is the only person that can survive the warfare with the narcissist, and they will burn them to the ground. But they do the same thing to codependents as well. When the codependent no longer has anything to supply them with, they will absolutely, completely, utterly destroy you. They never just walk away and leave. They destroy you when you're at your worst, when you need them the most. In some cases, they will completely burn your life to the ground. They will destroy your finances, they'll destroy your business, they'll destroy your reputation, they'll take you to court, they'll put you in jail. They'll lie and said you abused them. They'll punch themselves in the face until they, and then they'll go and say you did it to them. I look at Johnny Depp and what's her name? I mean, the lengths that a borderline will go. And all the while, they'll be calling you a narcissist, just like this person is doing to me. We burn you to the ground, we abuse you back, and because the narcissist is so horrified that we are doing this, so enraged, you just said that you burned them to the ground and you abused them back, And now you're acting like somebody shouldn't be horrified and enraged? What happened to all that empathy you were talking about? I thought you had too much empathy. Where did it all go? Somebody who has empathy never talks like this. Somebody who has empathy when they've been hurt says, I feel really bad for them. I hope that I hope they find the help they need. I'm going to have to go and heal from this, but I really hope. It's just so sad. That's what somebody with empathy says. Somebody with empathy doesn't say, you know what, I take it and I take it and I take it, and then I turn off my empathy and I come for you and I burn you to the ground. Someone with empathy never talks like that. Ever. A psychopath does talk like that. So intent on punishing this behavior, he spends the next 10 years, okay, so we abuse you back. And because the narcissist is so horrified, I am horrified. I was horrified at the abuse that I went through. I'm not a narcissist. But you're right about that. The abuse that I went through was so horrific that, you know, if you watch my first videos, if you go back in time and watch my first videos, you'll see how horribly devalued I was. The house that I was in, I went out of my way. I was in another country and I put a lot of money down to rent this beautiful house that we were going to be with together. I was in this empty house with no furniture in a foreign country. I didn't know anybody. I'd just been horrifically discarded after being chewed up and spit out. I was in horrific pain, and you're telling me that I shouldn't have felt that way? This is surprising to you? Again, what happened to all that empathy you had? Where did it go? I was suicidal. I made this channel. I started off thinking I'm just going to share, I just needed to talk to somebody, so I turned on the camera and I started talking. I was actually trying to talk to myself and help myself out of a suicidal state. And to my surprise, I left it alone. To my surprise, the channel started blowing up. So after I had recovered, because I had worked the steps and done all the work, I came back and started making these videos. Not because I wanted, not like you. I mean, I've never once mentioned the name of the person. I'd never once mentioned anything about her other than that she existed. And I talked about, you know, things that are true about all borderlines. So what you're saying is absolutely false. I never made this channel to attack her. She doesn't even know it exists. I don't even know if she knows I still exist. I don't care. But this is something a borderline would do. The borderline I was with, she used to bring out her Facebook and say, I was with this guy 5 years ago, I was with this guy 10 years ago, and asked me to do things like abuse them, like send them abusive emails. She was still thinking about all of the people she had discarded and thrown away. And she even gloated about it. She even gloated about how much they loved them and how she had torn them apart. You know, and they had said this and they had done that, and then she couldn't be with them anymore. This is what goes on with a borderline. What you're trying to, this perfect victim who can't help themselves, who's been so horrifically abused, which is true, but then you use that as a justification to then burn people to the ground because God forbid they get their feelings hurt. Something's not right. This is why this is a mental illness. Anyway. So intent on punishing the behavior, spends the next 10 years on YouTube telling us why we must be punished. I've never told you that you should be punished. Never once said that. Find one time, even in this, where I say borderline should be punished. I've never once said that. Calling you out on your abuse is not punishment. They should be punished, discarded, blocked. Yes, that is true. You should block the borderline. Without a doubt. If you're in a relationship with a borderline and they are doing this to you, you should completely, totally block them. Block them on every possible way, because if you're with them, you've been bonded to them, and they will always come back and pull you back in, and they'll just feed off of you. You need to get the hell out. And this is why I tell people to do the one thing, and why I'm telling people to do what I'm talking about here, which is at reversenarchabuse.com, and quantum shifting, which you can find at thunderwizard.com. This is why I tell people to do that. You need to get your life back. You need to get your energy back. And by the way, borderline that's calling me an abuser, you can do it too. If you do this work, you can heal. You don't have to justify your abuse or your conflation. And not, I also know, I'm sure that you do end up with narcissists. Borderlines love narcissists. And I'm sure you've been abused by them. Do you want to stop doing that? First thing you got to do is you got to start taking responsibility for your side of it. And then there are ways to heal. I'm not here to punish anybody. I want everybody. I know that you were horrifically abused, and I know that your value, your sense of value you were never able to even access it. I want you to. I mean, even though you're saying horrible things, passively, aggressively about me, and saying some really frighteningly horrible things about what you've done and what you plan to do to other people, I have empathy for you. My empathy, even though I know all this about you, I still have empathy for you. Empathy doesn't mean I need to fix you. It means that I know that you deserve to be loved simply because you exist, and I know underneath all of that damaged exterior is a soul that is perfect and beautiful. I know that. That is empathy. So what you're saying about me just isn't accurate. I don't have any negative feelings towards you at all. Calling you out on your abusive lies is the kindest thing anybody can do for you. Whether you accept it or not is up to you. Most narcissists and borderlines are incapable until they are. Taken to court. Of course you should be taken to court. If you did something illegal, if you destroyed somebody's business, if you slashed their tires, if you destroyed their reputation, if you stole from them, if you physically attacked them, yeah, you should be taken to court. That's not punishment. That's just the result of your actions. The pain that you're experiencing doesn't justify anything. Reminded again and again of our failings while never seeing his own. How do you know I haven't seen my own failings? How can you possibly know that? You don't know anything about me. You don't know the 30 years that I've spent in therapy and group therapy. You don't know the 40 years that I've spent in 12-step work. I mean, you haven't seen all of my 4th steps where I've written out all of the things that I've done in terms of the resentments that I've had and my mistakes and my misunderstandings. You don't know anything about me. How can you possibly know? The unaware narcissist, this person goes on to say, the unaware narcissist devotes himself to a continuation of this abuse dressed up as advice. Talk to the people who have followed my advice. What you're going to find is every single one of their lives have gotten better. Every single one of them. You don't know that because you haven't taken my advice. So you can't possibly say that I'm abusing you because you haven't taken any of my advice. I don't even know who you are. They will never forgive the reactive abuse of the borderline. Of course, why should we? You just went through a whole story about the reactive abuse of your mother towards you, because all abuse is reactive. You think abuse is okay as long as you can justify, well, you did it to me first. So that's what you just said. As long as I can justify to myself that I'm reacting to your abuse, then it's okay. And you can't punish me for that, and you can't blame me for that, except if you're a borderline. It is guaranteed that a large percentage of the time you are reacting to abuse that isn't happening to you. And even if it is happening to you, abuse is always abuse. You always have the choice not to abuse. If you're being abused, leave. That's not reactive and that's not abuse. That is something you should do. I'm not saying discard somebody who loves you, but if you're being abused, you should leave. But you want to justify. You want to abuse other people. You want to turn off that, what you call your empathy switch. You want to turn that off, and you want to have the justification to abuse other people. And then you're gonna justify it by saying, well, they did it to me first. If they hadn't done it, I would have never. I have too much empathy. I won't hurt you. But again, somebody whose empathy never abuses back. And calling you on your bullshit and mirroring back to you and reminding you of how horrifically damaging it is to be on the other side of borderline abuse is not abuse. All right. And then it goes on to say they will never forgive the reactive abuse of the borderline who has moved on, wounded but alive. So if you have moved on, you're no longer wounded. What are the most dangerous animals? Cornered, wounded animals. So you never want to date somebody who's wounded. You want to date somebody who's recovered. So wounded but alive means that you haven't recovered yet. You don't have an awareness. You haven't gotten enough recovery in whatever therapy you're doing to get to the place where you're no longer wounded. Alive and prospering is the goal, not wounded but alive. Again, that's just victim mentality. I get it, but you can do better. Your reactions, you think you can't help them. I understand that. But the truth is, you choose to do them. Your impulses are incredibly strong, and you think you can't resist them. Therefore, you justify it. I understand that. But the truth is, you chose to do it. And if you chose to be abusive, if you chose to react, you can choose to be healing. You can choose to not react. You can choose, instead of using all of this to justify and have a victim mentality, you can choose to awaken, and you can choose to be loving, and you can choose to heal. And most importantly, you can choose to love yourself. And loving yourself, you can't be loving yourself while abusing somebody else. You can't do those. You can't do those actions at the same time. Just like there's no such thing as having too much empathy and then turning it off. Empathy isn't something that's turned off. Empathy means that you understand the effects of your behavior on other people, even when you're angry. That's empathy, and you don't have that. But you can if you're willing to do the work. My suggestion, I'm not an expert because I'm not a borderline. My observation is that borderlines that do DBT therapy with the DBT daily workbook, the exercise book, you do exercises every day, and you go to DBT group therapy. My observation is that those people very quickly can learn how to have healthy relationships. So if you want to do that, by all means, I hope you do. My empathy for you, I know that you're in a lot of pain, and I know that you want to heal. And my empathy for you is that you try that. I don't know what your path is going to be. I know that's worked for a lot of people. So that's it for me, guys. Again, I'm taking a new tack. I'm no longer doing this woke thing where, victim mentality abusers get to go on and on about their abuse and attack other people without taking responsibility for how horrifically their abuse is to other people. And again, the kindest thing I can do for a borderline is to tell them the truth. They don't have to listen. There are other places to go. This channel wasn't made for borderlines. It was made for the victims of abuse. Again, just to have somebody come on here and not have the awareness that this channel isn't for them, it's for other people, again, shows a complete lack of empathy. So those are the things that I recommend for borderlines. Anybody else, including borderlines and narcissists, because narcissists became narcissists because they were narcissistically abused. Go to reversenarcabuse.com. You can also go to Quantum Shifting. There's also a Patreon page for this channel, which is patreon.com/reversenarcabuse. Oh, there it is. Patreon.com/reversing narcissistic abuse. So you can go there as well and become a member of that page. If that goes off, I'll put up more things on that page as well. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. I wish you guys all the best. I love you all. I hope you all find that you have the power within you to live from a place that you know that you have value simply because you exist. You are lovable simply because you exist. In fact, there is literally nothing you can do to make yourself more lovable than you already are. Narcissistic abusers out there don't see that. That's their problem. You don't have to meet their needs. You only have to make yourself happy. And when you live your life to fulfill your deepest needs, you help everybody become happier and more aware. People that want to abuse you aren't going to like it, but that's their problem. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon. Take very good care of yourselves, and I will see you all next time.